houses, but a lot of people of my generation and even younger, the Gen Zs, they can't afford to get into the marketplace the way they want to. The average age of the first-time home buyer in America right now is at 38. That's the highest it's ever been, right? And so this is a problem that, as I mentioned before when I first started this podcast, it's a problem that's not going away. It's a problem that is here, likely for years to come. And so we have to figure out how to address that, how to help in any way that we can. And so I wanted to make sure that this podcast served that market, served that demographic as much as it can, right? Because we know that that is going to help. Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. Today's episode is a special one. This is episode 52, and it marks an official year since I first started this weekly podcast. There's been a lot that I've been able to learn as I put this together each week, and sometimes, you're racing against the deadline. Sometimes you barely get it in there as well, but it's been an awesome experience that I have enjoyed and will continue to keep going and keep doing and see how many people we can really help achieve that goal of home ownership. Next week is actually going to be my birthday. It's one of those times. And so I'm going to take time, a me day, right, where I can really just take a moment to just reflect and get prepared and get ready. And so next week I will be taking 1 week off, and then we'll hop right back into this weekly segment, just going into different topics and different discussions. And if there's ever things that you want me to address, I'm happy to go into that as well. In this week's episode, I wanted to take time to sort of do a recap on some of the things that are constantly on the minds of many home buyers out there. That was a whole reason I even started this podcast, was to give insight and help to people who were wanting to achieve the goal of home ownership. It's more difficult now than it has ever been before. We're seeing a lot of warning signs taking place in the marketplace. They said recently that 42% of the home buyers out there in the market right now are part of the baby boomer generation, and 28% are millennials, right? And that may not seem like a big deal, but that is a massive shift that is happening in our world right now, where you have a lot of the baby boomers or coming in that are able to afford the houses. But a lot of people of my generation and even younger, the Gen Zs, they can't afford to get into the marketplace the way they want to. The average age of the first-time home buyer in America right now is at 38. That's the highest it's ever been, right? And so this is a problem that, as I mentioned before when I first started this podcast, it's a problem that's not going away. It's a problem that is here, likely for years to come. And so we have to figure out how to address that, how to help in any way that we can. And so I wanted to make sure that this podcast served that market, served that demographic as much as it can, right? Because we know that that is going to help so many other areas of your life when you're able to achieve that home ownership. And with it becoming increasingly difficult in today's marketplace, I wanted this to be a help. And so today I'm going to focus on the top 3 questions that home buyers, first-time home buyers in particular, have asked on Google, and just kind of do a quick recap on each of those questions, right? All the questions are addressing things that we have talked about in past episodes, but I wanted to do a recap on some of those items and kind of discuss what's going on in present day as it relates to these questions. And so we're just going to break those down and kind of go into a little bit more about what we're seeing in the marketplace nowadays. And so the number one question that first-time home buyers are Googling in today's market, and I can assure you that this isn't going to change. If you look 5-10 years from now, this is going to be a question that's going to be number one almost every year, if not in the top 3. And that question is, should I buy a house right now, or do I wait? That's the question that I get all the time from buyer clients as well. It's one thing that is constantly kind of swirling around in people's minds when they first start to wrap their mind around this whole concept of buying a house in the first place. And it's one of those things that there will never be a cut and dry cookie cutter response to this question. It's going to change constantly in every single market, in every single environment. And so it's always something that basically boils down to the words, it depends. Right. It's always going to be dependent on certain factors. And so the next question obviously is, okay, well, if it depends, what does it depend on? That's the one thing that we have to go into. And I've always said this, and I'll say it again. But if you as a home buyer were to sit down with a piece of paper and write down all of the potential reasons that you believe you may or may not be ready to buy a house, right? If you wrote down every single thing, like, hey, my income is here, my credit score is here, I've saved up this much for the home purchase, interest rates are currently at this, right? If you wrote down all the different factors that play into whether or not you believe you're ready to buy a house right now, when you have that full list compiled, if you go through each of those items, 80% of the things on that list should be associated with your personal situation, your personal finances, right? 80% of the things on that list should have to do with your personal finances, and only 20% or less should have to do with what's going on in the market. Right. And so a lot of times when people are trying to figure out whether or not they're ready to buy a house, they immediately direct all their attention towards the market. Right? What are houses selling for right now? What are the interest rates looking like? Is there a lot of inventory available? How's my credit compared for certain loan programs, right? They're looking at all these different factors related to what is going on in the market as opposed to looking what's going on in their personal finances. And then they make the mistake of trying to get their finances or their situation to fit with the market, right? You're trying to fit this square shaped finances into this round hole, right? And it just doesn't work out, right? There's all these different factors that come into play. Instead of trying to fit your personal financial situation to the market, you need to make sure that the market fits within your personal situation. Don't ever try to time the market. That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, and it's one of the mistakes that many buyers make in many instances or situations. You need to be doing what is best on your personal terms in situations, right? So asking yourself, do I have my emergency fund saved? Do I have my down payment ready to go? Have I talked with a lender? Have I gotten a pretty good estimate of what my bottom line is, what my out-of-pocket cost is going to be for this house? Have I calculated all those different things? Have I made sure that I'm in the right place emotionally, financially? Do I have a stable job that is likely to keep me in this place long term? All those things need to factor in, and that should always take precedence over what is taking place in the market, right? Because if you try to time the market, it's a loser's game, right? Every now and then there are situations where people just get lucky and they're happy to win, but you don't want to base a decision this important on luck. You need to make sure that you are basing it on, okay, if regardless of what goes on in the market, I want to make sure that I have all my things situated in order so that I'm not dependent on the market to be in this situation. The people who often end up making the biggest mistakes are usually the ones who are basing their decisions or trying to get the market to fit around their personal financial situation. And so that's always the question that you need to be asking. When you're trying to figure out if it's the right time to buy or not, it should always focus primarily on what is going on in your personal situation. And if you do have all your ducks and everything in a row, that's the time where you're ready to buy. And you don't need to be as focused on what's going on in the marketplace, right? So every single time when you look back over the years and you look at all the different recessions and all the different things that happened, it was always a good time to buy for someone. It may not have been a good time to buy for everybody, but every time it's always been a good time to buy for somebody out there based on what is going on with their personal finances, right? And so you have to figure out whether or not that fits within your timeline and what's going on. In the marketplace right now, we have very high interest rates, high relative to what the price of the houses are, right? These aren't the highest interest rates we've ever seen by a long shot. They're a third of what the highest numbers we've seen. However, when you mix those higher than normal interest rates with the housing unaffordability crisis that we have right now, that makes it for a recipe for a really difficult time for a lot of buyers, especially most recently with all the tariff talks and all the fluctuations in the market. We've really seen a spike recently in those interest rates, almost a full percentage point, right around 3/4 to a full percentage point. And so there's been a lot of buyers who have kind of been forced on the sidelines all over again in what is typically the most popular time of the year, just simply all the fact that the pricing has changed so much in what they believed they could afford. And so in the market right now, we're actually seeing listings start to sit a little bit longer. Now, the inventory still isn't at a point where we would consider this necessarily a buyer's market. However, there are a lot of listings that are sitting on the market longer. And so we're seeing more deals and transactions where you're not seeing the price way over list. You're not seeing situations where the buyers or the sellers are refusing to make any repairs or refusing to give any concessions. We're not seeing that as much right now. You're seeing a lot more deals where there are closing costs included, right? In 2021 and 22, that was almost a rarity. We almost didn't see that. People were waiving inspections, waiving appraisals. Now we're finally getting back to a more normal market where if buyers have requests for certain repairs, if they're asking for a little help with closing costs, sellers are a little bit more likely to take that on, especially if the house has been sitting a little bit longer. And so again, even though the interest rates are higher than what they've been over the last couple of years, you still might be in a position where you say, hey, my financial situation personally is strong enough that I feel good making a move right now. Because again, if they were to come out next month and say, hey, we're going to drop the rates, and we saw this massive dip in the interest rates, it's going to be a flood of new buyers coming in the market, which is going to mean a ton more competition, which means the prices are going to spike right back up all over again, right? And so this could be the ideal time. Even though the rates are high right now, this could be the ideal time for you to buy right now, where you're able to get more concessions, you're able to get the seller to handle more repair requests and everything like that. And so don't ever just look at it and ask yourself a blanket question based on what everybody else is doing. Right. That's another mistake that buyers make. They look and see, okay, what are people in the market and on the news saying? What are my friends doing? What are my family members doing? How are they moving forward with the home buying process? Again, they shouldn't factor into what is the best move for you. You need to be looking at your personal situation and let that dictate what moves you need to make. Right. And so, again, it all boils down to, it depends whether or not it's the right time to buy. And a realtor like myself, a realtor who is based around teaching these concepts, will always help you sit down and figure out whether or not that's the case. I have no problem telling a buyer if I feel like, hey, based on what you told me, based on where things stand right now, it might be a good time for you to just hold off, wait a little bit, and kind of see where things land. I have no problem telling the buyer that, because again, I'm in this for the long term, and I want my clients to feel as if they were to call me years from now, that they would still feel like I was the best person for the job, and I wasn't just an agent who's telling them what they want to hear so that I can get that deal closed. That's not what we're doing, right? That's not what the goal is, and that's not why I'm doing this podcast every week. I want to help you put yourself in the best position possible. And so that's always going to be the number one question that gets asked. And again, it's always going to be dependent on what's going on with your situation. The second question that was the most Googled question is, how much house can I afford? And this is a question, again, it always comes down to the money, right? That's one of the biggest things that people have out there. And a lot of people, especially nowadays with the house prices and interest rates where they are, a lot of people are aware and very cognizant of what their monthly payment is going to be. A common mistake I typically see when it comes to this question is people will often compare it to what they're paying in rent. And that is not an apples to apples comparison, right? There's a lot of things that aren't included all the time in what you're paying in rent and what the lender feels like you are capable of being able to pay, right? So when you're looking at paying a mortgage versus paying rent, the lender is going to want to consider not only your credit score, not just your income, but they're also going to want to see what your debt obligations are looking like, right? How many debt payments are you having? We live in a debt-heavy society. Credit card interest rates, or credit card payments, I should say, reached an all-time high for the U.S. households in America. And so you've got all these people stretched a million different ways. They've signed up for all these different payment plans. They've got car loans, student loans, personal loans, credit card debt. Like, they have all these debt payments that they're paying money out. And every time you sign up for a new debt payment, that is lessening your buying power when it comes to a home purchase, right? So when you go to rent, all that landlord cares about is, okay, do you make a certain amount over what the rent is? Oftentimes that's about 3 times what the rent, right? So they care about what your gross income is, and they also care about your credit score. Those are the 2 main factors that they're typically taking in consideration. Your landlord is not going to be asking what your student loan payment is. They're not going to be asking what all that stuff. They just care, are you likely to pay this back, and are you getting paid enough to do it? They're not going into all those other areas excuse me, as well. And so that is something that is going to be a huge difference from when you actually go to sign up for a mortgage. A lender is going to take all those other additional debt payments into consideration. And if they feel like you're pushing yourself too thin, right, where you've gotten to the point where you're going down the road of potentially becoming house poor, where you have the majority of your money each month going towards your house payment as opposed to all the other expenses that are happening in your day-to-day life, that lender is going to throw up a red flag and say, I don't think that they're ready right now. And so you can't just simply look at a mortgage calculator online and say, I'm paying $1,800 a month in rent. I'll enter that in, or I'll figure out what house lines up with that amount, and that can be how much house I can afford. That's not the best way to do it. The best way for you to figure out how much house you can truly afford is for you to sit down with a lender and have them run your numbers, run your credit, and have them give you an itemized breakdown of, based on the area you're looking, because a lot of different factors come into play as well, right? Are you looking for a townhouse, or are you looking for a single family? Are you looking in one county versus another? That changes your tax rate. There's a lot of other factors that go into the price of that mortgage or what you're paying each month. And you want to sit down and talk with a knowledgeable lender who can help you work through all of those different numbers and figure out what works best for you. And you may find out too that, hey, I may qualify for a house that's expensive, but that wouldn't make me feel comfortable. All right, if it doesn't make you feel comfortable, you don't need to move forward with it, because again, life is going to happen. It's going to be difficult. There will be other things that are going to be vying for your attention, vying for your finances. And so you need to make sure that you are comfortable with those payments as well. How much house you can afford may not be the same across the board, right? It's a subjective question that depends on the person you're asking. You want to make sure that the amount that is on there is an amount that you feel that you can comfortably pay each month. And then if there's any other things that happen, because now that you're owning versus renting, you're now responsible for anything that breaks down in that house. And so again, you have additional funds available to handle those emergencies. What else may go down, right? And it's not just emergencies with the house. You also have to factor in the fact that your car is likely going to have issues pop up from time to time, right? If you have a family, your family members are likely going to have emergencies pop up or things come up that are going to happen. And it's always going to be things that are vying for that time and attention. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where that house becomes more of a curse than an actual blessing. And so when you're trying to figure out how much house you can afford, I know you want to just Google it. I know you want to ask ChatGPT and all these different things to try to get an idea. But the best way for you to have an accurate idea of what you can afford is to sit down with a quality lender. And more times than not, your realtor, your trusted realtor, can give you some great recommendations or contacts to reach out to. And then the last question that was the most Googled, and this is somewhat in line with the second question, but slightly different as well, slightly more parsed down, is what credit score do I need to buy a house? And as with many of the things that you'll come to find out, or many of the responses that we'll give when it comes to the home purchase process, is it depends, right? The general range is usually somewhere around that 580 to 740. That's about the baseline, but even that is really pushing it, right? And there are certain things that are factored into that credit score, right? And so certain credit scores mean that you have a better or more favorable interest rate, or you might have a different loan program that you have to use. A lot of times, when you see people say, oh, hey, what are the interest rates today? And you go online and you look up to see what the interest rates are, the different companies that are having one, you might notice that you look at 4 different mortgage companies and they're all quoting different rates for that day. Part of that reason is because those rates are often related to certain conditions for those loans, right? So one lender may be saying, hey, here's our rate for a conventional loan if you have someone who has a 740 credit score with 20% down. And then you might have another lender who's posting, hey, here's our rates today. But then if you look in the fine print, you realize that this is for somebody who only has a 10% down payment and a 680 credit score, right? Like, so it's different factors that play into it, and that changes the rate that you will often have to pay. And then you also have to consider the fact that different lenders may use different numbers, right? So there's 3 different credit reporting agencies. Some lenders you only work with one. Some lenders may take the middle number or the average of the highest and low. It just depends in certain situations. So you really need to, again, sit down with the lender and figure out, okay, based on what my credit score is right now, what are the type of loans that I have available? You may find out that, yes, you could technically get a loan right now, but the loan that you qualify for has a few more hoops that you have to jump through, or some more red tape that you have to go through, and that may make your offer look less attractive, which means that your pool of homes that are available for you to buy becomes smaller than if you were to wait and improve your credit score. Those are all factors that you need to take into consideration. And so it's not just a matter of figuring out, hey, do I qualify to get a mortgage? It's, hey, do I qualify to get a mortgage that is going to put me in the best position possible to get the house that I want, right? And so those are all things that you need to be paying attention to and figuring out what type of loans, what type of down payment you're going to be looking at, and how that changes things. And then also on top of that, if you realize that you're at a position where you need to improve your credit score, a lot of lenders will be able to put you in touch with people who can help you to build that credit, because it's not just a matter of, oh, I'm just going to pay this off or do this. I always feel bad when I hear stories of people who spent the past year or two working on something to build up their credit, to get it the right way to where they thought it needed to be, only to get in and find out that, oh, you actually didn't need to work on that. We would have preferred you work on this. That would have had a better impact on your credit score. They don't know that because they're just flying by the seat of their pants and just doing what they think may be best, right? It's not always a matter of paying off a certain loan or closing out a certain account. There are some things you could do that you have great intentions and then find out after the fact that it actually had a negative impact on your score, right? So you want to make sure that you are doing everything with a strategic plan in place that is guided by someone who knows and understands these systems, right? And so again, talk with your lender, help get the advice that they want to give you for the best way to go about improving your score and coming up with those goals, right? Like I said, if you think about like going to the gym and working out, right? You may have a goal of saying, hey, I want to lose 40 pounds. But if you walk into that gym, if you don't know what plans or what equipment to use, you don't know how long do I run on the treadmill? How many weights do I lift? What am I eating like, right? Like all these different things that a coach can help you with, right? If you don't have that assistance or that guidance in the transaction of the deal or in the gym with you, you're just going to be coming up with random stuff. And then before you know it, you look up and realize that not only did I not gain pounds, I actually, not only did I lose pounds, I gained a couple of pounds, right? You don't want to be in that position, right? And so you want to have people who know what they're doing, who can help you come up with a detailed game plan to get you in the best position possible. And so it's going to require you taking the step to have those conversations. I know a lot of people don't want to have those conversations. I was one of them. I understand how you feel, but that is going to be by far the best way for you to make sure that you're in a solid position when you're ready to make that move. So I hope that that's helpful for you all. Again, we'll be going through these topics as well as many others over this next year to come. Thank you for being a supporter and a listener. If this is your first time, welcome. I hope that you will continue to come and check us out again. Look at some of our other episodes. And for those of you who have already been listening, thank you for your support. I've really enjoyed being able to get to do this over this past year, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. Again, as a reminder, I am going to take next week, so the episode for April 28th, that's my birthday. I'm going to enjoy that day off, and I'm going to take that week. But after that, we'll jump right back into this. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you all next time. Thanks.